Sri Aurobindo. Namaste. Good evening, everybody. So today's topic that we have chosen is ego. And yes, I felt, when I had to pick a topic, this is one of the most important topics specifically in integral yoga. It's one of the stumble blocks that every sadhak experiences at different stages of sadhana. It can be a beginner or somebody who has started the practice, started the yoga, or any other philosophical school also. That ego is something that a lot of people struggle with. So though it is a basic aspect, but it is very, very profound, and to know how to first understand, become aware of it, and secondly to understand different ways to deal with it. So these are the two aspects that we will be covering. What is ego? What are the different types of ego that we will be experiencing in our life? And what is the purpose? Like, why is first of all ego important? And lastly, how do we deal with this difficulty? So first, let us understand the meaning. So ego, in simple terms, if we have to describe, it is the I feeling, the I-ness. I want this, I am thinking this, I feel this. So it is a state of self-preoccupation, and that which separates ourselves from the oneness that is there. So here the mother says it's a sense of being a person separate from others. So what is this ego? Helps us to become a personality, an individualistic personality that can be different from the other people out there and the universal energy. The sense I am, I think, therefore I am. All of these are descriptions of the ego. So it is something that gives us a definite form, a character. So as we are understanding ego, you will also look at it, not merely something that is a negative aspect, but it does have a role in every individual's life. It is something which is, which starts from childhood. As a child, you look at a child, the child is all constantly developing his or her ego, because at that level, that individualization is important. So ego as a principle, it's important for everybody to go through that ego and renounce the ego to experience, or rather to become one with the truth. So that individual personality. So going a little deeper, egoism is when we are constantly want everything towards ourselves. We are the center of the universe. We think that if this is not something very theoretical also. When you start observing your own thoughts, So just think from morning till now, what were my thoughts predominantly about? If you actually sit and reflect, 95% you're only thinking about your own self. What did I do? What did I eat? What will I do next? What are my children doing? Everything again from your own perspective. So that thinking of us as being at the center of the universe, and somebody who is egoistic is not very interested in other people, but it is always the self-interest that one puts always. And what mother says is, of course, all of us are egoistic to some extent, definitely. It's not like there is somebody who is not there without ego. So we need to not be blind to this fact. That is normal for everybody. Some proportion, at least some proportion exists. And as and how, we kind of not become aware of it, and it is increasing so much in our lives, that is something which is not helpful for us. And there are people out there, everybody is egoistic. So you can look at it like this. Like when I always start thinking about myself, and there is another person who's always so involved in himself. So when there is egoism from both the sides, there is completely disharmony. There's completely that coming together, that doing something cannot be manifested. So that's the reason why, we need to understand that we need to become conscious of this ego and slowly start working towards it. So the ego thinks always of what it has and what it doesn't have. So what do I have right now in my life, or what is it that I want to have? Constantly ego is preoccupied with these kind of ideas. So generally speaking, an egocentric man is always thinking about, okay, I have this, what influence so that has on my thoughts, my emotions. So always this person is calculating, analyzing everything in respect to how much he has, what is it that is missing, what is it that he can go towards, work towards, and always, is this something that I like, is it something that is giving me pain? Constantly involved in this sort of thinking and experiencing. So, and pride, vanity, there are different words conveying the same thing again. Vanity is again self-centeredness to a greater extent. Pride is that feeling of, I am superior to somebody else. Ambition, that I want to achieve so and so things. So all of these are, different forms of ego manifesting in our own lives. So when somebody who's not egoistic, now we've understood somebody who's egoistic. Somebody who's not egoistic is always trying to understand things happen for a reason, and try to see how the divine is interfering, or rather using the person as an instrument in achieving, or for his own, her own purpose, for the divine's purpose, for his or her own, when I say. So that is the outlook of an unegoistic person. Then here I would like to narrate a small story from the Bhagavata Purana, Skanda 6, Narayana Kavacha Stuti. So Indra, you must be all aware that Indra, the king of gods, is usually, whenever there is a threat to his position, he tends to become egoistic. So one day what happens, Indra was sitting in his palace, and there was some of the demigods, there were gods, and some of the servants, everybody was there and serving him, and everything was happening, and Brihaspati enters. So Brihaspati is the guru of Indra and of all devas. So as he enters, Indra is so encapsulated in his own ego and what everybody is there and serving him, making him feel good, that he did not feel like standing up for the guru. Usually the principle is that you get up as soon as the guru comes, out of reverence, respect. you don't, even process through the ego and all, you just get up. But here he did not get up, and Brihaspati understood clearly that this is the ego and he has to be taught a lesson. So immediately he left that place. And then after some time, Indra, just shook from his ego, got out of that, and then started to reflect on what happened and how he hurt his guru by disrespecting him, and because he was extremely filled with ego. Then Brihaspati again, chose to not be the guru for the devas, and he abandoned them. Now this was the time when Asuras knew that this is what has happened in heaven, and they had to take advantage of this situation. They had some earlier aspects with which they were not happy with the devas, so they wanted to attack. And this is the time when they attacked and kind of took over the heaven. So this is the story. And then again all the devas ran to Brahma, Lord Brahma, and then requested that, and Lord Brahma clearly said, it was your ego and pride that led you to this situation. So now at least, as this thing, I will appoint Vishwarupa, son of Twastra. So I will appoint him as your new guru. So at least from now on, make sure you don't get absorbed in your own ego, and that's how the story continues. So even, from this story we understand it is not merely the mortals, but even the gods did. From the Puranas we see so many important people, gods and different people had experiences of ego, and this is one of the impediments that they did face. So now ego is something, even our liking and love is based on ego. Here, which means that, even in a relationship of your loved ones, you may be saying that I was thinking of my mother or my spouse. At the end of the day, again, if you look at why you want them or their connection, is again because they are your people and they are important, they will do something to you with out of that expectation. Usually that is again coming from ego. Certain kind of relationships, of course not everything. So if you observe these divorces or breakup that you see in nowadays youngsters, so you understand it's not about the other person, it's all about, okay, how will I live my life if this person is not with me. So in such relationships, again, ego is something that is playing out. Sri Aurobindo says ego is the reason of the difficulty in everybody. So it is, the more you start getting absorbed, the more you find everything very complicated, disorganized, not according to your own expectation. That's when we tend to get sad and upset and not be happy how we are supposed to be. So the ego can be acting in our everything, whether it is big or small. Even altruism and humility can have a touch of ego. Now here you can see this getting manifested in a lot of charity places. You see that people, when they donate, it looks very, very nice from an altruistic perspective. However, go to temples where there's donation, you see such big boards of their name put up. Why is that? It is because they want their name to be in the front. That is coming directly from the ego. In the name of altruism, in the name of charity, the person wants to be recognized, the person wants to be appreciated. So again, so that is something which we should all be aware of. Is it something that we are doing out of the need to serve somebody else, or is it something that we are trying to satisfy our own ego? So, so the divine consciousness is something which is pure and does not have ego. So one way for us to overcome the ego, of course, from our own practices we can focus, but only if we merge with the divine consciousness and is in a position to experience the oneness with everybody, everything around. That is when clearly that there is no ego. So sometimes, even in our own sadhana, you must be all seekers and seeking a spiritual aim in your life. As long as you're doing your meditation, as long as you're reading, everything is going, you feel good. But the time when you feel like, okay, there's so many problems in my life, so many difficulties, I don't think there is any value in this sadhana, I don't know why this is not going right. The moment you start, questioning your sadhana, and the moment you start taking it personally that you are responsible for this, these things are happening, this is not meant to be like this, I don't know if I'm in the wrong path. Again, ego is something that is playing out in such scenarios. So that's when you have to become conscious. Even the sadhaks at a different level of progress also, this is something that they experience. So this is very interesting. Now we are moving to the purpose of ego. Why was ego necessary? I would like to read out a quotation here. Ego is what helps us to individualize ourselves and what prevents us from becoming divine. It is like that. Put that together and you will find the ego. Without the ego, as the world is organized, there would be no individual. And with the ego, the world cannot become divine. So it's very beautifully Sri Aurobindo encapsulates the entire purpose of how ego is important for us to become separate being, and we have to again get back to that oneness which is there. Otherwise, it is something that will not be helpful for us to become the divine. So individualizing, and another reason why ego is also helpful is for the man to act and get something done, to become goal oriented, to do something, achieve something, to quest for knowledge or to learn, to do something. Ego was necessary for the tamasic animal to act. So as we were progressing in the evolution, it was necessary for us to do some meaningful action, right? And again here how ego is something that can help us to understand this separation, like I spoke about how we are not with the one. So ego is something that will help us. It's coming out of the ignorance. It is something which the movement in the mind in nature is thus able to conceive the object as the reality and the inhabitant as limited and determined by the appearances of the object. It conceives of the object not as the universe. We are not able to conceive the oneness with which universe is running, but as itself a separate existence standing out from the cosmos and indifferent in being from all the rest of it. So this ego is something which is in its own limited manner, it's helping us become a separate being and look at the reality also in the same existence. Though it is just one, that one truth that is there, but that ego is making us experience that we are different and independent. So ego can be in different parts of our being. Okay, so ego does, it keeps coming up from time to time. It is increasing in our own self. When we are not aware of it, it can, take over our lower nature completely, and it will not allow us to even aspire for a higher nature. So that is one thing. And there are different forms. So one is, there is physical ego, there is mental ego, and there is vital ego, 3. And apart from that, there is also sattvic ego, there is also rajasic ego and tamasic ego. So now we'll try to understand briefly what these egos are. The physical ego is all about our own physical self, like I spoke about, the form and the name that we have that separates us into separate being. Now whenever there is physical ego which is playing out in our lives, we don't feel like doing sadhana, or the body is a limitation for us to progress in the spiritual aspect. You can look at some of the rishis and sannyasis. Most of them deal with their other types of ego. However, this physical ego is something which is extremely difficult to lose that bodily consciousness and merge with the one. So that physical ego is something that is stopping us. It is something that is instinctive. It's been there with so many generations, irrational, obscure. So these are some of the characteristics of the physical ego. And one of the things that nowadays which is happening currently is Kumbh Mela. Right? So many people are going to that spiritual gathering, and where they're taking a dip in the water which is energized, right? That's what we believe. Now that is one of the ways actually that we can dissolve our physical ego to some extent. Because what happens when we take a dip in the water is something that neutralizes, and we don't feel the body connection. As we take a dip, we feel lighter, if you experience, right? So that is something which allows our body to be receptive to receive the cosmic energy, right? And that experience of oneness can be much better once you are in the water. So that is something that came to my mind as I was reading about the physical ego. And one of the sadhaks asks whether egoism remains at least in the physical being as long as the body remains. So to that Sri Aurobindo replies, no, it need not, but only if one is liberated from Purusha and Prakriti. A lot of times we may be liberated from one of these things, but as long as the Prakriti is there, the action of Prakriti is there, the bondage, the ego is going to continue. So now we will move to mental ego. So the mental ego is when our consciousness is identified with the mind. It is the mental ego. For example, a lot of times we are always involved in, is this a right thing for me, or what will I get out of this? The calculation, the profits that I get, the questions that you have, whether this is good for me, this is something that I should get into or not, the decisions that all of these thinking that we involve ourselves in with respect to our own self at the center is the mental ego. And this is something which wields the spontaneity of our soul. Our soul spontaneously aspires for the truth, but the moment we start thinking, so you can also connect this to your own meditations. The moment you start to sit for meditation, you get a lot of thoughts. But the moment you start questioning, okay, am I doing this correctly? Am I, am I doing the right thing in the sadhana, or am I doing this for my own self? Is it for the mother? Am I able to offer correctly? Once we get into these thinking, that is the mental ego. And then we move on to the vital ego. So the vital ego is with respect to the emotional aspects, the feelings that we have towards our own self, the expectations that we have from people, and the ignorance that we have, the self-pity, oh my God, like how will I do this, or what do I want, the desires that you have, the self-justifications, okay, I did this and this is because of this, I feel this, our constantly our fight to get something done, to attract everything towards our own selves, our consciousness, and repeating the same things again and again. So many people struggle with anger, depression, anxiety, constantly that is something that stays with them. Constantly they're worried, is this something good for me or not? They're scared, the fears. All of this pertaining to our own self is the vital ego. Then also the vital ego includes a false sense of importance. That is, a lot of times we keep thinking, magnifying our own ego, like this is something extremely important for me, and this is, if I don't have this, I cannot continue with my sadhana. So a lot of times, even if you have achieved so many things, thinking that I did it, when that comes in. So for example, today you're all sitting and you did your meditation, you had a beautiful experience, you had a beautiful vision. The moment you finish it, when you start thinking, wow, I must have done so nicely today, I must have concentrated so well that I had this experience. What are you doing? Suddenly this is the ego that is acting, right? Of course, it was something you aspired for. The moment you attach the I to this experience, to the journey, to whatever you're doing, it becomes your ego. So, and this is also something we are moving to the sattvic ego. So the moment you experience, I am the doer, I am the receiver, I am receiving light, I am receiving energy. Of course, it's a good thing, it's a positive thing that you're progressing, you're receiving all these good things. But though, you are being disinterested, though you're being detached from this, but the moment you are, I am the man of knowledge, I am a good devotee, thinking in these lines is the sattvic ego. And rajasic and tamasic ego. So rajasic ego includes the pride, the vanity, delusion, all of these things, something that is overpowering you, the excitement, the violence of speech that you involve yourself in, constantly you're fighting to get something for your own self, a lot of energy directed towards getting things done is for yourself, is the rajasic ego. Constantly the anger that you have, and if you can accustom yourself to the work, I want to do this kind of work only, I don't want to do this kind of work, that is coming from your rajasic ego. You are not able to channelize, accept that it is the divine's work, I will do whatever work that comes to me. If you are not being in that, then which means that your rajasic ego has taken over. The sex instinct, the jealousy, the vanity, even when you're doing a pranam here, when you're getting disturbed, when you feel like I'm not able to do it completely, why? That is your rajasic ego. The energy that is there in you is disturbed. It is always concentrating on what you want, but you're not able to get out of it and give yourself completely to the divine. So that is something, and a lot of times this rajasic ego is the suggestions that we receive from outside, like you're working, so instead of you want to come to the ashram, but suddenly you're getting these suggestions, okay, do this work, do that work. So that these suggestions that are coming, and some of the things coming from your subconscious mind, which means that your old patterns of doing some things, your disturbances, you don't want to do certain things. So that kind of unwillingness to do your work is also coming from your rajasic ego. And then we have the tamasic ego. Tamasic ego is when you start to think that I cannot do this, I am a failure, and I cannot be successful, I'm so weak, I'm so miserable, I am so obscure, I don't have energy. All of these, which is not allowing you to open completely, that is your weakness, your inertia. All of this belongs to the tamasic ego. I can't do, Sometimes even the suicidal tendency that is coming, I want to die, I want to give up, I just can't live. This is coming from the tamasic ego. You don't want to do something, that feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, everything is the tamasic ego. Because again, why this tamasic ego is playing out is, I want this, if I don't have this I can't. Why people get depressed? Because they want others to understand them, they want others to give importance to them. So it is all about I want this, and that's what is causing that craving in that relationship. So that's what is making that person feel that I don't have this, and that's what is creating the depression. So yeah, so we have completed discussing the different forms of ego. The last form of ego is the spiritual ego. So this is something which the mother says is one of the dangerous forms of ego that somebody who's doing very well in the spiritual path can also face. So you can hear, to understand this, you can think of a sannyasi or a rishi who has really, done a lot of tapas, has grown a lot and is practicing, and he's, being with the people. The moment somebody comes and tells, Babaji, Guruji, you are very good, you are amazing, and the moment he starts to fall for these praises, appreciation, that he is something very important, and again he's forgetting that it is the divine doing, it is him, that as he likes to enjoy this kind of appreciation, it is also called as the magnified ego. Once the limits of our ordinary mind and vital are broken, and that's when you feel I am responsible for this, I am doing so well in my sadhana, I can experience these amazing powerful possibilities, I am able to do this magic or whatever. So all of that is coming from this spiritual ego. When one gets excited with these spiritual experiences and takes pride in success in yoga to one's own self, then that becomes the spiritual ego. So few lines from Savitri which will explain this spiritual vanity very beautifully. I will read them out. But not by showering heaven's golden rain upon the intellect's hard and rocky soil can the tree of paradise flower on earthly ground, and the bird of paradise sit upon life's boughs, and the winds of paradise visit mortal air. Even if thou rain down intuition's rays, the mind of man will think it earth's own gleam, his spirit by spiritual ego sink, or his soul dream shut in sainthood's brilliant cell, where only a bright shadow of God can come. So now we will move to what can be some of the practices. So we will try to focus more time on this. How can we get rid of this ego? What is it that we have to do? Again, a small story here. It is a story of Narada Muni. So Narada, as you know, is a very, very devoted bhakta of Mahavishnu, Lord Vishnu, ageless sage. Now he wanders and he's always chanting the name of the Lord, Narayana, Narayana, whenever you see. Now one day he starts to think that, oh my God, I am chanting the name of the Lord all the time. I must be the best bhakta, the best devotee. And then he goes to Mahavishnu and he asks him, so Narayana, please tell me, who is your favorite devotee? I will take your name all the day, so I am thinking it must be me. And then Lord Vishnu thinks for a moment and he says that right now it's very hard for me to tell, because very, very few people are coming here to Vaikuntham. So what I suggest is go down to earth and meet Lord Rama, who is my avatar right now, and ask him, he will tell you the answer. So then Narada Muni cannot contain the excitement. He goes down to earth and he meets first he comes across Hanuman, and he'll tell him, this is why I have come down. And Hanumanji tells him that, there is a book, there is a small diary which Lord Rama keeps, in which he writes all his devotees' names. You go there and check that. So then he meets Lord Rama and he tells him, I want to find out about who is the best devotee. And then Lord Rama says, right now again I have so many works, my minister will take you, and there is a book you can, as Hanumanji said, you can go and look at it. He goes and opens that small diary. In the first page he sees his name, Narada, and Prahlada and some of Shabari and all of those names. And he's very, very happy. Oh my God, Lord really is understanding who I am, and he's written. And then he goes back to Hanumanji and he'll tell Hanuman, I have a very sad news for you. That I could not find your name in Lord Rama's diary as the best devotee. Now Hanumanji says, which diary did you refer to? Is it the diary that was with the Lord Rama all the time, or is it the diary that was kept in the bedroom? Then he says, oh, is it? I have to see the other diary as well. And then again he rushes and he waits for Lord Rama to again come back and give him some time. And then he asks this time, I want the diary which is kept with you all the time. I want to see that diary, Rama. And then he takes and he opens that diary and he finds Hanuman's name first and Bharata's name second, and the whole book is filled only with these two names. Now he asks Lord Rama, why is it that what is the difference between these two diaries? Then he says, the first diary is full of people who remember me all the time. They are very, very important to me, and my life, they have become an inseparable part of my life. This is, your name is also there in that. But the second diary includes the people I remember every moment, because their devotion is such that it does not have any boundaries. And after hearing that, he realizes it's his own ego that is playing out and questioning all this, and he completely again starts to get immersed in the chanting, and then he goes back. So yeah, from this story, I think we can all understand it is not about what we are doing, that concept of am I doing it right. It is the mother, it is Sri Aurobindo, it is the Lord that is through us. It is no longer I. So that feeling that we have to move towards. And another interesting conversation between Sri Aurobindo and one of the disciples. So Sri Aurobindo says, can egoism be cured, with any kind of medicines and all of that? And the disciple says, if it can be cured, I would like to first apply that to myself. So the fact that first you are conscious about the ego makes half the cure. Is it not so? Then the disciple asks Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo replies, not necessarily, but definitely being conscious about your ego is the first step. What is the second? The disciple asks. Then Sri Aurobindo replies in a comprehensive way. To detach oneself from all these things, to think as if all these things belong to the outer being or someone else. As one goes on doing this, the Purusha gradually withdraws its sanction from the Prakriti, and the Prakriti loosens its hold over our own nature till a spiritual control takes place. But if one associates oneself with the Prakriti, then the Purusha becomes a slave to it. So what is important? Rejection, of course, is a stronger way. Rejecting things even before they enter into our consciousness. So what are the different steps, or rather different aspects that we can keep in our mind as we want to work towards our ego? One is, of course, becoming conscious that we need to eliminate this ego, and having this as one of the foundational aspects of our sadhana through love, devotion and self-giving. So the mother says, so long as the ego is there, one cannot love. Love alone can love. Love alone can conquer the ego. The more you are able to function from your heart, from your psychic, the more you are able to connect with somebody purely, without any expectations, without any kind of filters, that's when we will be able to come out of our ego. Love lacks ego, ego lacks love. Again, another quote of Sri Aurobindo. So two conditions that are necessary. One is an ardent aspiration. Always, constantly, are we able to pray to the mother, please, get us out of this ego. And progressive abolition of the ego. Two things. This ego, coming out of this ego is not something that can happen within few minutes or within few years. But it takes a lot of time and a constant, perseverant aspiration. Otherwise, and very, lot of devotion and complete surrender are also extremely important in this process of removal of the ego. And one must be very quiet, always aspire for a higher consciousness, to come down to take out this ego. It is not something that we can do by our own selves. What are we aspiring? We are aspiring so that there is a descent of a higher energy to kind of dissolve this ego that is there within our own self. And what should we do from our side? Complete, total, unconditional self-giving, offering, surrender. Right? So there is a small prayer that Satprem, one of the devotees for the mother, has beautifully said. Something has to explode in me and take possession of my entire being. It is not my force that can achieve this, but yours, Mother. I beseech you to open in me the doors of my true being. I no longer want this false relationship with the outside, this life of approximation. I want to be your instrument, not the instrument of this ignorant and suffering ego. Mother, I ask only for the truth, the light, that which is my real self. I have had enough of this surface self that invades virtually all my days. So that is the kind of prayer that we can have constantly, repeated 1,000 times. Then the second one is using strong willpower. Again, will is also something that will allow us to dissolve this ego. That capacity to resist the temptation. A lot of times we get back to that same vicious circle. Today you think, I want to offer. Then again you go and start thinking this is right, that is wrong. Again we get into this mental ego, we get into this tamasic ego and all of that. So the moment you are falling back, again you try to, using your will, you have to again kind of offer, surrender. So then we have the next one is, another important thing is also in this, karma is a result of the ego's actions. Only when the ego abdicates is the karma dissolved. The more we are, functioning towards this ego, the more we are building our own karma. The moment you have to get out of the karma, which means you have to dissolve your ego. The next one is finding the true inner voice. When naked of ego and mind, it hears the voice. For us to listen to this inner voice, we have to first come out of this noise that is there. Always constantly do this, do that. The moment you get out of this is when you will be able to hear your inner voice. And it is an ego in man that is shocked to find the ego in others. Only so when the moment you start finding faults in others, you are able to see that because you are having faults within your own self. That beautifully. So the moment you feel, the moment you get out of your ego, you feel everybody is beautiful, everything is amazing, everything is that oneness, that one truth. So, and the moment you are able to offer to this flame of Agni, flame of purification and progress that is there within you, you will be not only prevent these movements from taking an active form, but you will also be able to transform. So always imagine that fire burning deep inside your heart that is there to burn the ego that is there, that is stopping us, and the opening towards the psychic, so that the descent of a wider ego free consciousness can be there, which can be poured from the above. The moment we can do this by self-giving and surrender, we can be assured that we can get out of this ego. Then the taste for nothingness, Mother says, is the harmonious way to put an end to ego. Not wanting, not having a preference for everything. Should it be like this? Should it be like that? So once we start developing this taste for nothingness, it is also possible to come out of this ego. Then an important thing is the endurance. Like I said, this whole journey we have to constantly practice conquering ego. It's not something that can happen within 1 day or 2 days. So one of the places Mother actually mentions in her own yoga, as she was doing it, how she says that I calculated it would take 200 years to say 10 crore of my japa. Well, I am ready to struggle 200 years if necessary, but the work will be done. So that was the endurance that she had to go through in her own journey. And she tells us how it is important for us to also break out of this shell which has been there for so many years, to widen our being, to heighten our consciousness. It's important to offer at every moment. And practicing humility. So humility, it's almost like the first necessity to be humble. What is humility? It is them, or it is her, it is she that who is taking care of everything. I am useless, thinking literally that I am nothing in front of the divine, in front of what the divine's energy is, divine's power is. So the first thing is to pocket your ego, not to preserve it, but to get rid of it is as soon as possible. 3 things are required: consciousness, plasticity and surrender. Also that flexibility in opening, accepting, the receptivity in taking in the force. And then dissolution of the ego. So it's not enough just to surrender, but the ego must be dissolved and merge with the divine, disappear in him. Until our nature is completely transformed, we can't say that that I has dissolved. Completely, the moment you are able to be one with the universal energy, then that's when the complete transformation has happened. Then the last aspect is the realization of the divine. The moment we are able to realize the divine force, unity, in the dynamic flow of this life, that is something which can be essential in removing the ego. So just one beautiful experience Mother actually narrates. I will just read out how she has gone through and what was her experience. Before, I always had the negative experience of the disappearance of the ego, of the oneness of creation, where everything implying separation disappeared, an experience that personally I would call negative. Last Wednesday, while I was speaking, and that's why at the end I could no longer find my words, I seemed suddenly to have left this negative phenomenon and entered into the positive experience. The experience of being the Supreme Lord, the experience that nothing exists but the Supreme Lord. All is the Supreme Lord. There is nothing else. And at that moment, the feeling of this infinite power that has no limit, that nothing can limit, was so overwhelming that all the functions of the body, of this mental machine that sums up words, all this was. I could no longer speak French. Perhaps the words could have come to me in English, probably, because it was easier for Sri Aurobindo to express himself in English. And that's how it must have happened. It was the part embodied in Sri Aurobindo, the part of the Supreme that was embodied in Sri Aurobindo for its manifestation, that had the experience. This is what joined back with the origin and caused the experience. I was well aware of it. It's very, very powerful, beautiful experience that Mother talks about. With this, I would like to end the talk. The last 10 minutes, I want all of us to concentrate, and we will be beginning the third phase of the renovation shortly. So I want all of us to aspire that for this renovation to take place very harmoniously, beautifully, so that this place is completely transformed, for their force to work beautifully with all of us.